Are you a real man if you don't make love to your homeboys? Like, let's be honest. Alright, so today we have Hesiod. Hesiod. I don't know how to say this name. Um, I don't know how to say this name here. He's like the other Greek philosopher. Like, you have Homer and then you have Hesiod. So, this world is weird. I'm trying to figure it out. And I was gonna watch this anyway, but I figure, you know what? Let me just turn the camera on, react to it. I don't know. I don't hear anything. Oh, he's
A
just not talking.
cosmogony is a theory that attempts to explain the origin of the universe. A theogony is an account of the origin and descent of gods. Hesiod's Theogony is a classic ancient Greek poem. It was, purportedly, orally composed. It describes the origins for the various forces of nature personified as gods, and how they came to wrest control over the universe. It's both a cosmogony and a theogony. The poem itself is slightly over 1,000 lines and took me about an hour and a half to completely finish. However, without appropriate mythological understanding or a diagrammatic representation of what I saw, I found it difficult to follow the genealogies and understand each character's significance. So I thought I'd take the liberty of going through the poem again with an animated diagram of what I read. As you
Now, this video is an hour long, so this is gonna be my longest video.
can tell from the video length, this is a long account of all the deities as mentioned by
Yeah, see, I might make a part one and a part two and split it up.
Hesiod, both major and minor. Most Greek
Whoa,
god
what was
family
that?
trees look, well, ugly and minor.
What is going on here? Okay, this guy's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Most Greek god family trees look, well, ugly, and mine isn't an exception. But if we go through it from the start, it should make a bit more sense by the end. Also, before we begin, I'd like to make it known that I am a monoglot, so I may mispronounce a few names. Additionally, I am not an historian or a classical scholar, so I apologize if I misinterpret anything. I am doing this out of personal interest. I hope you find it interesting too. So, without further ado, let us begin. In typical epic fashion, the poem begins by invoking the muses who bequeathed Hesiod, the poem's composer, with the inspiration and impetus to take on the daunting task of
Let's begin our song with them who holds the great holy mountain of Helicon, and around its violet-like spring, an altar of exceedingly strong Cronios dance on dainty feet, and who, after bathing their soft skin in the Permessos, or the spring of the horse, or holy Elmios, on the peak of Helicon, form their dances, beautiful dances that arouse desire, and they move erotic.
outlining
Okay.
the origins of the cosmos. He even inserts himself into the
Talking about the Huz.
poem in line 22. Look, there he is. Call me lazy, but the first 115 lines serve mostly as an invocation to the muses and as a preliminary, shorter poem to the much bigger piece. As I'm not here to analyse with a fine-tooth comb the intricacies of every word of every line of the poem, but instead just to establish a surface-level understanding of the gods' genealogies, I will skip this preface and go directly to line 115, where Hesiod begins the outline. There was nothing. Then there was chaos. The infinity of space or formless matter supposed to have preceded the existence of the ordered universe. I'm sure one could take this explanation a bit further, but we've got a lot of Greek deities to cover, so I'll save myself with this basic definition. Alongside chaos, we have Gaia, Tartaros, and Eros. Gaia is famously known as the personification of Mother Earth. Eros is the personification of love and desire, and if you want to take a more Freudian interpretation, you could say Eros is the personification of our very will to live. Tartaros is the personification of the deep abyss of the underworld. According to Hesiod, these first primordial entities somewhat arbitrarily popped into existence. Chaos then somehow parthenogeneously gave birth to Erebos and Nyx, darkness and night. Gender. That's a thing. From now on, I'll represent what I understand to be boys with a square and girls with a circle. I'm not sure what Chaos's gender is or how it gave birth to 2 children without a sexual partner, but it did. Erebos is a boy
Wait, what?
and Nyx a girl.
How are darkness and night the same? How, like, darkness and night are the same thing.
As siblings, they loved each other very much, and in that love, had sex and conceived 2 children, Aether and Hemera. We're going to have to accept the limited gene pool. In the Greek gods' world, incest is wincest. Similar to how Tartaros is a lower part of the underworld, Aether is the divine upper sky, whose air the gods breathed. Hemera is the goddess of day. Chaos isn't the only single parent. Gaia produced Uranus, the sky, Pontus, the sea, and Urea, the mountains. This is where things get a little tricky. Family trees are usually quite easy. Messy, but easy. That is, if the families grow and reproduce as they biologically should. Gaia, however, bedded her son, Uranus, which is a little bit difficult to represent diagrammatically. I'll use this dotted line to indicate that they bedded each other. Anyway, from their love, the mother and son/lover conceived 12 Titan children. Iapetos, Okeanos, Tethys, Hyperion, Thea, Koios, Phoebe, Kronos, not to be confused with Kronos, the personification of time, and his son Kairos, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, and Krios. You may have noticed I've been citing the poem line numbers so you can check for yourself. You may also have noticed that I haven't ordered the 12 Titans in the chronological order of their birth. I did this for diagrammatic purposes, which will make a little bit more sense later on. If you thought 12 Titanic Titans were a lot to birth, you'd be right. They are an unruly lot. But this is Mother Gaia and her son, Uranus. They didn't stop there. They gave birth to Cyclops. 3, in fact. These 3 one-eyed giants are Brontes, Sterops, and Arges. Brontes means thunder, Sterops lightning, and Arges bright or flash. This is significant because they fashioned for Zeus the lightning bolt, so each of the 3 is an aspect of the weapon. But wait, there's still more. Gaia and Uranus also conceived 3 more giants of equally impressive stature and description.
My thing is, why not just have the... If you had 3 kids just from your own... Why did you need to have sex with your son to have more kids? Like, Gaia is weird for that, because she just could have had kids, like, by herself.
You'd be right. They are an unruly lot. But this is Mother Gaia and her son, Uranus. They didn't stop there. They gave birth to Cyclops. 3, in fact. These 3 one-eyed giants are Brontes, Sterops, and Arges. Brontes means thunder, Sterops lightning, and Arges bright or flash. This is significant because they fashioned for Zeus the lightning bolt, so each of the 3 is an aspect of the weapon. But wait, there's still more. Gaia and Uranus also conceived 3 more giants of equally impressive stature and description, with equally impressive names: Hecatoncheires, or Centimanes, or 100-handers. If you've played Persona 5 or Dungeons & Dragons, or you could probably just tell from the name, they were giants who had 100 arms on their shoulders. Hesiod says they should not be named. Then he names them: Cottus, Bruareus, and Gyges. Gyges. Have I heard that name before?
Oh, that's from
Well, if you've read
Earthbound.
Plato and The Lord of the Rings, you'd think Tolkien took the idea for a ring of invisibility from Plato, who, in his dialogue The Republic, uses the story of the mythical ring of Gyges, a ring that belonged to King Gyges that could make the wearer invisible, a bit like Hades' helm. But that's an aside. Go away, aside. Shoot. Anyway, back to the children born of incest. Uranus hated his children and concealed them from the light, much to their mother/grandmother's woe. To exact revenge on her son/lover, she fashioned for her Titan children/grandchildren a serrated sickle. When Uranus, her son, came into her bed and attempted to sex with her, Kronos laid an ambush, grabbed his father's genitals with his hand, held said genitals, then cut them off. Then, with genitals still in hand, Kronos took them to the sea, still holding his father's severed genitals. Kronos then dropped his father's genitals that he cut off and chucked them into the sea. When the genitals hit the sea, they were carried away to a place near the island of Kythera, and then they began to fizz, like baking soda making love to vinegar. From the foam rose a beautiful maiden, a walking embodiment of beauty and passion, the goddess Kytheria, named after the island she was born near. Most people, however, know her as the goddess Aphrodite, the goddess who came from the sky's severed testicles. There are other accounts of Aphrodite's birth.
It's kind of messed up that the goddess that's seen as the most beautiful of all goddesses was birthed from the most heinous act. It's an interesting dichotomy.
But I think this one is my favourite, not only because I'm puerile, but also because Aphrodite literally means foam-born goddess. That's right. In God of War 3, you can choose to have sex with your great-grandfather's nutsack. Anyway, on our family tree, to save us from cluttering the space up, we can add a separate entry for Uranus's genitals. Needless to say, when Kronos severed his father's wimwam, there was, naturally, a bit of a bloody mess. Gaia sort of absorbed the blood, and with Kronos' blood, she then gave birth to an indeterminate number of Erinyes, giants, and Milii. Milii are nymphs of the ash tree. Nymphs themselves are minor goddesses embodying parts of nature. They are divided into different categories, such as the Milii, who are nymphs of the ash tree. Giants are, well, giants, and the Erinyes are the Furies of Olympus, who take revenge on those who have sworn false oaths. As you can imagine, things got tense after Kronos severed his father's crown jewels, by which I mean his genitals. So, let's give them a bit of space and revisit Nyx. Nyx, apparently tired of having sex with her brother, decided to children by herself. In any case, she gave birth to Thanatos, also known as Death.
That's what I don't understand. Like,
lends his name to the psychoanalytical concept of the death drive, which could also be a pretty cool album title. Oh wait, it is. Nyx also gave birth to Moros, or Doom, Hypnos, or Sleep, and a tribe of individuals, each a manifestation of a dream. This collective tribe of dreams are called the Oniros. She then also gave birth to Momus and Oasis, or the gods of blame and woe. Outside of Hesiod, it would probably be more accurate to label Momus as the god of satire or mockery. Nyx also produced the Hesperides, or the nymphs of the evening, a second type of nymph who care for golden apples and trees bearing fruit. She then gave birth to the appointers of death and goddesses of doom who punish relentlessly. I believe that refers to the Keres, who can be thought of as a representation of destiny, but would more accurately be described as the goddesses of violent death. So, we should technically label Thanatos as being the god of peaceful death. The Keres, being goddesses of violent death, hovered around battlefields, waiting to consume the flesh of the fallen. They are like evil, malevolent versions of the Nordic Valkyries.
that's nice.
Nyx then birthed 3 daughters to be sisters to the Sisters of Destiny. The 3 Muire, more commonly known as the Sisters of Fate, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. Clotho is the spinner of life's thread, which means she determines your major life decisions, like your place of birth, or whether you choose Phillips or Braun. Lachesis is the dispenser of lots who basically decides your lifespan, and Atropos is the unturnable one, who cuts your life thread and determines how you die.
Nice.
So Clotho pulls and spins the thread, Lachesis measures it, and Atropos cuts it. Then, Nyx gave birth to Nemesis, the embodiment of retribution, Apati, the goddess of deceit, Philotis, the goddess of sex, and Geras, the god of senescence.
Wait, hold on a second.
The last of
That
Nyx's
doesn't make
children
sense.
was Discord, the goddess of
these
death, gave birth to Atropos.
This person right here gives you more. It says dispenser of lots, so this person essentially gives you more life. So, what's the point of this person? Wouldn't this person just stop giving you life? All right, whatever.
Cuts it. And Geras, the god of senescence. The last of Nyx's children was Discord. Very useful. Discord's Greek name is Eris. She doesn't have any temples, unfortunately. Hateful Eris took after her mother, and parthenogenously had children of her own. Many children, actually. She gave birth to Ponos, god of hardship and toil, Lethe, goddess of forgetfulness, which is also the name of one of the 5 rivers of the underworld, Limos, goddess of famine, and the Algea, personifications of pain. In the Anacreon tier, Lupa is named as pain, while Ania is grief. In the Alcman, Akos is named as distress. Although there could be more Algea, it's a bit difficult to accurately quantify archaic beliefs that varied widely historically and geographically without more historic evidence. Digression. Let me take a moment to point out that this family tree isn't the infallibly objective, unchangeable truth for all Greek gods. This is Hesiod's theogony. And, for certain gods, their parentages and lineages may and do differ according to which poet you go to. Because humans are complicated and beliefs vary temporally, spatially, and culturally. A famous example would be Aphrodite's origin. Here, according to Hesiod, she came from Uranus's nutsack. According to Homer, Aphrodite is in fact the daughter of Zeus and Dione. Personally, I find that to be a bit boring, and there's no foam. I mean, Aphrodite means foam-born goddess.
True.
Hesiod's account has foam, whereas Homer's doesn't. And if you find the concept of severed genitalia a bit icky and you still choose to side with Homer's account, in God of War 3, as the son of Zeus, you'd still be having sex with your cousin. So, pick your poison. Later rectified.
Like, why did they put that in the game? Also, who is Dione? Because usually it's the god's characteristics that form that. I don't know.
This disconnect in his dialogue, The Symposium, where he asserts that the two Aphrodites are actually two separate individuals. The Aphrodite of Zeus and Dione is the earthly Aphrodite, Aphrodite Pandemos, who represents a basic carnal form of passion driven by sexual gratification. It's the type of love you have heterosexually to reproduce. The Aphrodite of Uranus's nutsack, Aphrodite Urania, represents a more heavenly and noble passion. A passion and love, not driven by sexual desire, but a desire to enrich one's soul with partners valued for their intelligence and character, a desire that can only be fulfilled through a homosexual pedophilic relationship with prepubescent boys. That's right. The Greeks were pederasts. Digression over. Anyway, alongside the Algea are the Hismini and Machi, personifications of battle and war, the Phonoi, male personifications of murder.
I mean, are you a real man? Are you a real man if you don't make love to your homeboys? Like, let's be honest.
Female personifications of manslaughter, Nikia, personifications of arguments, Sudia, goddess of lies, the Amphilogiae, goddesses of disputes, and Dysnomia, goddess of quarrels. Although the difference between quarrels and disputes is a bit blurry, this might be a translation issue. I'm reading William Blake Tyrrell's translation. He uses the word quarrel after the word disputes, but Wikipedia says Dysnomia is the deity of lawlessness or anarchy. The Free Dictionary says dysnomy means bad legislation, the enactment of bad laws. I think we'll take Dysnomia to be the goddess of anarchy. That sounds much cooler. Anyway, the last two, Ate, is the goddess of ruin, and Horkos, the curse of oathbreakers, which is also a really cool name. Anyway, testicle tension over? No? Excellent. Gaia, not too pleased with her son/lover's actions, turned her gaze to her other son. On line 233 it says, and this is William Blake Tyrrell's translation, that Pontus sired straightforward Nereus. He didn't bear a child. It seems sex matters because to sire means to beget or procreate as a father, but it never specifies that he had philotes with Gaia.
What?
Most people take the word sire to mean he inseminated someone.
He did what King Piccolo does. He just, barfed him out.
In which case, he wasn't the only parent. but I personally think it's a tad ambiguous. In any case, Gaia, clearly not too happy with her first son, chooses to sex with her other son, Pontus. While Nereus may or may not have been the son of Gaia, on line 237 it does unequivocally say that Pontus mingled with Gaia, producing Thaumas, the excessively manly Phorcys, Keto with the beautiful cheeks.
Excessively manly. Yo, that's such a cool. Yo, that's crazy. Excessively manly. Yo, he's like Broly. He was so manly, it was excessive.
And Eurybia. Who were they exactly? Well, Eurybia is the goddess of the mastery of seas. This refers to the natural element.
Alright, so we are going to start back up here. Where was I?
37, it does unequivocally say
Alright.
that Pontus mingled with Gaia, producing Thaumas, the excessively manly Phorcys, Keto with the beautiful cheeks, and Eurybia. Who were they exactly? Well, Eurybia is the goddess of the mastery of seas. This refers to the natural elements that master or control the seas, like the wind or tides or nuclear and toxic waste.
You know what doesn't make sense about this? Is they're acting like what's always interested me about this world is the lack of knowledge when it comes to birthing children and how it's just kind of like this like lottery system. It doesn't really make sense. You would think that like the whole like thing that they're doing now, like gene splicing and like selecting certain traits, you would have think they would have started that a long time ago. And according to this, apparently the gods were doing that. Like that does not, if you think about it, like that really does not make any sense at all.
Phorcys is the god of, well,
like I guarantee you, like the gods would definitely know what the children would look like that they're bearing.
with Phorcys, Thaumas, and Keto, they just seem to be non-specific sea gods. They could be gods of a part of the sea, or something, but it seems in this poem they are simply objectified as vessels for having children. By that I mean they aren't known for doing stuff aside from producing children. For the sake of consistency, we can label them as sea god. As I've said, these gods, being objects of child delivery, must have children. Prepare for a few name drops, because, out of the blue, Hesiod names the almighty Doris as Nereus' lover. She does appear later in the story, but for the time being, I'll put her here. Anyway, Doris exists, and she's the goddess of fertility. Well, oceanic fertility. If you're a fish, good for you. If you're a terrestrial animal, I'm afraid Doris won't be able to help you with your premature ovarian failure or testicular cancer. With Nereus, Doris gives birth to the Nereids, or sea nymphs, 50 daughters in all. So, hold on because this is going to be quite a long list.
No way.
Protho, Eucrate, Sao, Eudore, Thetis, Selene, Glauce, Timothoe, Scio, Thoe, Halia, Pasitea, Erato, Eunike, Melite, Eulimine, Agave, Doto, Proto, Pharusa, Dynamine, Nessaya, Actaia, Protimidia, Doris II, Panope, Galatia, Pathoe, Panoe, Kimadoki, Kimataliki, Amphitrite, Chemo, Ionoe, Alimidi, Glauconomi, Protoporia, Eagora, Euagora, Laomedea, Ulinoe, Autonoe, Lysianassa, Ioane, Samathi, Menipe, Nesso, Eupompoe, Themisto, Pronoe, Nemertes. Wait,
Wow.
51? Maybe I miscounted, but wait, double checking. Maybe I misinterpreted a couple? I can't see any duplicates. Or maybe numerics were just a relative concept back in those days. If you notice something off, I definitely appreciate the heads up. Thanks. Anyway, that's a lot of children. But wait, there's more. Hesiod wasn't the only poet to name sea nymphs. Homer, Hyginus, and Apollodorus, a pseudo-one that is, name 47 more, according to Wikipedia. I could name them here, but this is primarily Hesiod's theogony. so I won't. I mean, my family tree is already really busy as is. We haven't even got to the Olympians yet.
Jeez.
Me. So, without further ado, let's go to Pontus's second child, Thaumas. He had children with a goddess called Electra. And I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no. This is not the same Electra from Euripides, Sophocles, or Jung. This is the goddess Electra, entirely different from the mortal Electra. This Electra comes from the same place as Doris, so we'll put them next to each other here. Thankfully, they didn't have as many children. Electra mothered Ielo and Ocypete, the Harpy sisters, and Iris, messenger of the gods and goddess of rainbows. In case you didn't know, harpies are winged females who would fly and pick up lost souls, torturing them on their way down to hell. Nice. The exceptionally masculine Phorcys,
Bro,
thankfully, makes our tree a tad cleaner by having Philotes with Keto, his sister, the one with the damn fine cheeks. Incest for the win. Anyway,
are they
Keto
talking about her face?
gave birth to 2 old women, a bit like Benjamin Button. They only had fair cheeks. Amfrida, with a lovely dress, and Ennio, with a saffron dress. Remember the Disney animated film Hercules? The Sisters of Fate, featured as 3 old ladies, share an eye between them. That depiction of the Sisters of Fate is actually incorrect. The Miri have perfect ocular functions. It is these 2 old women, called the Gria, who share not only one eye, but also one tooth between them.
Ugh.
Additionally, the pseudo-Apollodorus from before also mentions a 3rd old lady, Dino. I think the commonly held belief is that there are 3 Gria, and Hesiod doesn't say anything about there not being 3, whereas he did unambiguously say that there were only 50 sea nymphs, and even then he miscounted. So, all in all, I think it's fine if we add the 3rd sister. So, what exactly did these ladies do? Well, I mean, it seems they were just wise old ladies. Certainly not as important as the Sisters of Fate. They did, however, feature in a story where Perseus held their eye as hostage so that they'd tell him where he could find Medusa. So, not very impressive. Interesting fact. According to other poets, Ennio is also the name of the goddess of war, sister of Ares, who, as you may know, is the god of war. As far as Hesiod is concerned, Ennio's just an old lady. Keto didn't stop with 3 old ladies. She's also the mother of the 3 Gorgon sisters, women who had snakes for hair and possessed the power of petrifaction. They are Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. While Stheno and Euryale are immortal, Medusa wasn't. She probably wasn't even a Gorgon to begin with. According to myth, she was unparalleled in her beauty, but when she was raped by Poseidon, who we'll meet soon, in Athena's temple, Athena cursed Medusa, turning her into a Gorgon. Then, Perseus, the same who robbed the old lady's eye, was tasked with killing her. He lopped Medusa's head off, and from her neck emerged her 2 children, Chrysaor and a horse with wings called Pegasus. We call Pegasus Pegasus because Pegasus was born near Pagaea, a small town on the Corinthian Gulf. Chrysaor, significantly more human than his brother, then mingled with a naiad called Callioro, who is also the sister of Electra and Doris. Their mingling produced a son, the 3-headed giant Geryon. Tired of monsters? Yes? Excellent, because Keto then had one more child. A beautiful and unmanageable thing called the Echidna, a half-woman, half-serpent who eats raw flesh. She then appears to mingle with someone called Typhus, who we'll meet very soon.
Why would he?
After
Ugh,
Typhus
God.
Echidna, she gave birth to Orthus, a 2-headed dog who looked after Geryon's cattle. Cerberus, a 50-headed dog who guards Hades' cattle, and Hut. Do you think Cerberus had 3 heads? No. It depends on who you ask. Some say Cerberus has 3 heads. Hesiod says it has 50, some say it has 100. Let's just call it the polycephalic Poochie of Hell. After Cerberus, Echidna had a 3rd child, the Hydra of Lerna. Who is the Hydra? Well, Hesiod certainly doesn't say. Popular culture and myth seems to indicate it was a giant water snake who may also have been polycephalic. Those heads may possibly have regenerative abilities. Who can say? What I can tell you is that Hydra then went on to bear a child, a Chimera. Child's may be the wrong term, because chimera is a creature that is part lion, part goat, and part serpent.
It's an epic
In any
pause.
case, this weird mix of
Bro, that was an epic pause.
creatures has given rise to the word chimera as a generic term for any blend of creatures, like in Full Metal Alchemist. Things get a tad ambiguous here. William Blake Tyrrell translates line 326 as she bore Sphinx. A lady bore Sphinx. The antecedent is unclear. In the previous 3 lines, Tyrrell describes the chimera we were just talking about, so I believe, post hoc ergo propter hoc, the she must refer to the chimera. So, the chimera then, as I just read, gives birth to the Sphinx, a destructive destruction for Cadmeans, whatever that means, and the Lion of Nemea. The Sphinx is another chimera, a creature with the head of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of a bird. The Egyptian Sphinx, you're probably familiar with, has a male head and is therefore referred to as the Androsphinx. The Nemean lion is just a lion, except its golden fur protects it from all mortal weaponry.
You're just saying it's the male head, but back in the day, like females had like very masculine features, so like their faces were very masculine.
However, it was eventually killed by Heracles, by being strangled. And here's the clever bit. Though no mortal weapon could pierce its fur even when killed, Heracles used its own claws to sever the head. Pretty. Actually, now that I think about it,
Smart.
pretty much all of Echidna's offspring were killed by Heracles in his 12 labours. Orthus in Labour 10, Cerberus in Labour 12, the Hydra in Labour 2, the Nemean lion in Labour 1. And don't think the chimera is safe either. It was killed by the hero Bellerophon and its cousin Pegasus. Now, I think we're done with Phorcys and Keto, except in lines 333 to 335, Hesiod mentions the last child of the manly Phorcys and beautifully cheeked Keto. Except this child seems too dreadful to even name. This time even Hesiod doesn't name it. All we know is that it's a serpent that guards golden apples. And with that, I'd like to take this opportunity to have a quick intermission. How about we take a bird's eye view and summarize what we've learned so far? We know that there are 4 primordial gods, Chaos, Gaia, Tartaros, and Eros. We learned that Chaos had 2 children. We learnt about the children of those children and their children too. We've learnt that Gaia had 3 children, the mountains, the sea, and the sky. We've learnt about the children she had with her first son, the 12 Titans, the 3 Cyclops, and the 3 100-handers. We learnt that there was an uprising amongst the Titans and they castrated their father. From his blood and genitalia sprung forth Aphrodite, the giants, the Furies, and the ash tree nymphs. We also learnt that Gaia had a family with her other son, Pontus. They had 5 children. Of the 5 children, we have explored the descendants of 4 of them. There are 5 other individuals who interacted with Pontus's children or their descendants. We still have yet to discover their origins, but you can probably guess based on where I've placed them in the family tree. There also remains the last child of Pontus whose descendants we still have yet to discover, Eurybia. This ties into the next big section. That is because the story with Uranus's children didn't stop where we left it. The Titans got busy. Let's go back to Uranus's family, the 12 Titans. With Uranus castrated, it's now the Titans who run things around here, and they're busy lovemaking, mostly with each other, which is why I arranged the Titans as I did, not by order of birth. I'd like the family tree to be as approachable as possible, and not some sort of mess like this. In any case, our first couple, Tethys and Okeanos, had children. Interesting fact. While I'm not aware of Tethys being a personification of anything, I do know that Okeanos is also the name of a great river that circles the world. Tethys gave birth to the gods of the rivers and the goddesses of the oceans, the Potami, numbering 3,000 sons, and Okeanids, numbering 3,000 daughters. Hesiod even tries to name a few, specifically the Potami being Nilos, the river Nile, Alpheos, Eridanos, Strymon, Ressos, Achelois, Nessos, Rhodios, Aliacmon, Heptaporos, Klenikos, Asbestos, Simois, Phenios, Hermos, Caicos, Sangarios, Ladon, Parthenios, Euenos, Odescos, and Scamandros. and the Oceanids being Peitho, Admite, Ianthe, Primno, Uranie, Hippo, Zuzo, Glutie, Pasithoe, Lexare, Glaxare, Dione, Melibossis, Thoe, Polydore, Kirkes, Luto, Yanira, Caste, Xanthe, Petraea, Menesto, Europe, Telesto, also had a saffron dress, Briseis, Asia, Desirable Calypso, Eudrore, Psyche, Amphiro, Okiroe, Idia, Lione, Metis, Urinome, Perseus, not to be confused with a similarly named male hero Perseus, Clymene, Electra, Calioro, Doris, and Styx. And hey, we found the parents of 3 of our mystery individuals. They are indeed Oceanids, goddesses of the ocean. But, with the 3 individuals' mysterious origins solved, I've singled out 7 more individuals. They're important for later in the story. For now, they're just Oceanids. On to the next set of Titans, who thankfully also had an incestuous relationship, making it nice and easy to represent on this family tree. I am of course referring to Thea, who had Philotas with her brother, Hyperion. Together, she bore the sun, the moon, and the dawn.
Dang, Hyperion is a cool name.
Helios,
What's your name, bro? I'm Hyperion. Dang, bro.
Selene, and Eos. Let's simultaneously tie up a loose end and visit our next Titan. If you recall, we never investigated Pontus's 5th
Wait,
child.
what was Dawn named?
And visit our and Eos.
Eos? There's a gym near where I'm at named Eos Gym.
Let's simultaneously tie up a loose end and visit our next Titan. If you recall, we never investigated Pontus's 5th child, Eurybia. Eurybia mingled with Crius and had 3 children, Astrius, Pallas, and Perseus, not to be confused with Perseus the Oceanid or Perseus the demigod hero. Their personifications aren't well known, so I'll simply refer to them as Titans.
I actually know a person, well, I don't know a person, but I've met someone whose name was Pallas. It's weird.
Except for Astrius, Titan god of dusk, who appropriately marries Eos, Dawn. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to cross some lines. Over here. From dusk to dawn. They mingled. They produced 4 strong winds, collectively known as the Anemi. Zephyr, the wind of the west, Boreas, the wind of the north, Notos, the wind of the south, and, well, Hesiod doesn't actually mention an eastern wind, so for the sake of completion I'll add in Eurus, the wind of the east. Their next child, Hesperus, is the morning star, except Hesperus is Phosphorus.
What?
Although interestingly enough, Phosphorus is another name for the morning star, which is the planet Venus, harkening back to a time when differentiating between planets and stars was a tad difficult.
I never knew that. That is so cool. Phosphorus is a name for Venus. Never knew that.
Another interesting fact, the Latin name for the morning star, or Venus, is Lucifer, and Venus's strange movements are what led to the belief that Venus was a fallen deity.
That is crazy. Okay, so Lucifer is Venus. Bro, I never knew that. That's so crazy. They don't tell you that in the Bible.
And what then led to the belief that Lucifer was a fallen angel. Phosphorus wasn't the only star. Dusk and Dawn gave birth to... well, they actually gave birth to all the stars that crown Uranus. The next child of Crios and Eurybia, Pallas, had children with the Oceanid Styx, who you likely know as one of the rivers of hell. They had 4 children. Zelos, god of dedication, or zeal, which is actually where the word comes from. Nike, goddess of victory, or a devil from Devilman. Baia, goddess of force and might, and Kratos.
Yo, this guy's a Devilman fan. Yo, that's so cool, man. Oh, man. Shouts out to Devilman.
Yes, he actually exists. Except here he's not the god of war, but the god of strength. In any case, we'll revisit Perseus in just a second. For now, let's go on to our next pair of titans. Phoebe and Koios.
That's why I love these type of videos, because like no matter how boring it might seem, you're always gonna learn something, and then you can just use that little bit of information and then just add it to everything else that you know, and then you'll figure out other stuff.
Who, interestingly, is also the axis around which the heavens revolve. They only had 2 children. Gentle Leto and Asterie went on to marry that guy Perseus we were just talking about. They had 1 daughter, Hecate, goddess of magic. Now here's the exciting part, the one we've all probably come here to learn about. The children of Rhea and Cronus. They had 6 children, famously known as the Olympians because they live on Mount Olympus. Hestia, goddess of the home, Demeter, goddess of agriculture, Hera, goddess of the family, Hades, keeper of the underworld and god of the dead, Hades is the god of the dead. But so's Thanatos. Well, it seems there is actually a difference between dead and death. One's a bit more contemporaneous. Death happens in a moment, whereas being dead is something that has already happened. Thanatos embodies the concept of people who die, while Hades keeps them dead, which is why he rules over the underworld. Poor Hades. Living in the underworld means he doesn't technically count as an Olympian because he doesn't live on Mount Olympus. Anyway, remember that asshole who raped Medusa? Poseidon. Well, he came next. Except Hesiod doesn't make it very obvious. To read the line, as translated by William Blake Tyrrell, Rhea, subdued by Cronus, bore illustrious children, Hestia and Demeter and golden-sandaled Hera, and mighty Hades, who dwells in houses beneath the earth, having a pitiless heart and loud, rumbling earth-shaker, and Zeus of councils. But wait, there's Hades. And then it kind of skips over Poseidon and goes directly to Zeus. I completely missed this when I read it the first time because, as you may recall, I skimmed over the first 115 lines. But in that invocation of the Muses, on line 15, Hesiod says, Poseidon, holder and shaker of Gaia, Gaia being the earth. So, when Hesiod says Earthshaker on 441, he is of course referring to the rapist Poseidon, god of the sea.
Dang, he did not like Poseidon at all. He didn't even name him.
Digression. Similar to how Hades and Thanatos personify similar concepts, so too do Poseidon, Pontus, Okeanos, Thaumas, Eurybia, Chrysaor, the 51 Nereids, and the 3000 Okeanids. There are a couple of solutions to this conflict. First, you could get really pedantic with semantics. Here's what I mean. In the poem, Pontus comes across as being the sea itself while Poseidon is the god of the sea, which may imply that Poseidon simply rules over the sea as opposed to actually being the sea. The Nereids and Okeanids could simply be personifications of specific seas or particular parts of it. An easier alternative explanation is theocracy. No, I don't mean like the Vatican or The Handmaid's Tale. I mean theocracy with an S. The idea of invoking a concept composed of a fusion of different gods. Then again, this matters more if you're an actual believer in the Greek pantheon and you're just trying to decide which god to offer 4 dead horses to. I'm trying to keep this video about gods as secular as possible. So I suggest that we just accept that deities may overlap. I'll point it out whenever I notice it, and I'll see if I can rationalize it for you. Anyway, digression over. We still have 1 child left. Probably the most important, well-known, horniest, thirstiest, nymphomanic hyperlibidinal of the lot. I am of course referring to Zeus, king of the gods, god of the sky. This pervert's reputation most certainly precedes him. Like Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet, he'll literally f*** anything that moves. Just search Zeus sex on the internet and you'll find more blog posts detailing his sexploits than there are pederasts in all of Greek history. Just make sure you have safe search on.
Why is he so horny?
Maybe use a VPN. I'm about to summarize a story we've all probably heard before, but it ties into a bigger theme. As we've established, the 12 Titans consider themselves to be in charge, and Cronus, the youngest, who led them against their parents, is the leader. He's the boss, head man, top dog, big cheese, the head honcho. Naturally, being immortal and all, he wanted to maintain his control. But his mother and father prophesied that he would eventually be overthrown by one of his own sons. Now to me, there's a very simple solution. You'd think, to avoid this, that Cronus would stop having children. No children, no prophecy. But Zeus had to get his overactive sex drive from somewhere, and Cronus was just as blessed by Eros, Aphrodite, and Philoctetes as his son would be. So fine, he has to sex with his wife Rhea. To you and me, the solution would be simple. Contraception. I mean, sure, maybe they didn't have condoms, but what about coitus interruptus, the old pull-out, the Rick Perry method? When Cronus just couldn't avoid having children, the only way he could get rid of them, in order to prevent the prophecy, would be to eat them. So his wife and mother to his children was naturally distraught. So Rhea begged her mother, Gaia, for help, who was only too happy to oblige. After Cronus had devoured his first 5 children, when Rhea had Zeus, she hid him away on Crete, leaving baby Zeus to be cared for by Gaia. When Cronus came for his meal of the day, she disguised a stone in baby clothes and fed it to him instead. Zeus was raised by Gaia, and when he was of age, Gaia played yet another trick on her son/grandson. Though Hesiod doesn't specify, on line 494, through Gaia's sagacious advice, Cronus vomited up his 5 children and the stone he'd eaten. When the stone was vomited back out, it became praised as a religious artifact known as the Omphalos. Zeus, now seeking revenge against his father, freed the Cyclops and 100-handers who'd been imprisoned by Cronus. They fashioned for him the lightning bolt. Now, with the support of his siblings, the Cyclops, and the fearsome 100-handers, Zeus was ready for an earth-shaking fight. "Let's leave it at that for now," said Hesiod. Interruption. You and I can sense a raging battle, but this poem is about more than just the conflict between Olympians and Titans. It's about family. And we'll probably return to this conflict, but for now, Hesiod simply says that Zeus now lords over mortals and immortals. Hesiod decided to make a little digression. Because, we can't forget, we haven't accounted for the last 3 Titans.
Start a new video so this doesn't get too long. Like my file size and like the cloud I put my videos on. Anyways.
Because, we can't forget, we haven't accounted for the last 3 Titans. Iapetos. He marries the beautifully angled Clymene. She gave birth to the Titan Atlas, Menetius, Prometheus, and Epimetheus. Menetius may have been the Titan god of brashness or hubris, because Zeus threw him down to Tartarus for his rashness and excessive manliness. Atlas is...
Bro, that's so funny to me. Excessive manliness. He was too manly. Like, couldn't do it, man. He was too... Oh, man. I don't know why. It really is so funny to me.
Well, very useful if you're lost. A common misconception is that Atlas was condemned to hold the Earth as punishment for siding with Titans in the upcoming war between Olympians and Titans. In actuality, Atlas holds the sky above the Earth.
Like, I just picture, like, some absolute stud, and he's got, like, a full beard and chest hair, and he's just, like, getting arrested, and he's like, what did he do? He's like, he was too manly.
So this statue is wrong. For every god so far, I've tried to give a summary of what they personify in the mythologies that surround them, in as much detail as Hesiod provides. However, Hesiod seems to take an interest in Prometheus, and devotes a fair few lines to his exploits. If you want to skip this story, there are timestamps in the description. Anyway, Prometheus and Epimetheus are the brothers who represent humanity, Prometheus being the god of foresight, while Epimetheus is the god of hindsight. Prometheus was a trickster. At Mecone, when mortals were making an offering to the gods, Prometheus hid some delicious meat wrapped inside an ugly and inedible ox hide. He then wrapped some delicious fat around some inedible ox bones. 2 offerings, one with a pleasing exterior and inedible interior, and the other the opposite. Naturally, Zeus chose the former. Stupid Zeus. When Zeus realized he'd been tricked, he took the gift of fire away from the mortal humans. But
Wow.
Prometheus was a shining lad. He stole back the fire. With the help of Athena and the Lame One, which we later learn as the epithet of Hephaestus, Zeus created a punishment for humans who had stolen back the gift of fire from him. Women. I mean, this wouldn't be a
What?
truly archaic text without some unbridled misogyny. Anyway, Hesiod says that
Wait, what? So, because Prometheus stole the fire back for humanity, Zeus put women on Earth. So up until this point, it was just all dudes. Bro, that doesn't make any sense.
women are a great pain for mortals and conspirators of grievous deeds.
Bro, the joke is hilarious.
Although looking more deeply into the poem, it seems they may not have made women in general to be evil, but one maiden in particular, who released humanity's evil. A majestic maiden. Although not explicitly stated, this first creation was likely the fair Pandora.
Yeah.
Hesiod does expand upon Pandora's character as a punishment for humanity in his other poem, Works and Days. Pandora was raised by all the gods, each giving her a gift, like clothing, speech, a garland crown, and a jar. This is actually where her name comes from, all gifted. Now, Prometheus told his brother, Epimetheus, not to accept anything from Zeus. But Epimetheus is Prometheus's antithesis. He's a fool, and he accepted Pandora for humanity. When he did, she opened her jar and outspilled all of humanity's evil. Pandora was humanity's punishment, a bit like Eve. Or was it Lilith? In any case, humanity was punished. Zeus then turned his attention to Prometheus. As punishment, Zeus chained Prometheus to a pillar to have his eternally regenerating liver pecked at by an eagle. Luckily, he was eventually rescued by Heracles. Digression over. Interruption over. Hesiod decides, having now told the story of Prometheus and Pandora, to now return to the conflict between Titans and gods. With Gaia's advice and the newly liberated Hundred-Handers, Cyclops and Olympians, Zeus leads his allies against the 12 Titans in a battle that would last for 10 years. This conflict is known as the Titanomachy. It appeared to be a stalemate, until Zeus gave his side nectar, ambrosia, and a rousing speech, which I won't recite here. The point is, this was an epic battle. Rocks were hurled, lightning bolts were thrown, words were spoken, each others were clashed with. After this epic battle, the dust settled and the victors apparent. Notice the pattern. The Titans overthrew their primordial father Uranus, and the Olympians overthrew their Titan father Cronus. This is a repeating cycle known as the succession myth. In both cases, the succession was led by the youngest son. I don't think that's actually integral to the succession myth, but I just found that to be interesting. Zeus then imprisoned his Titan father and uncles.
Oh, that is interesting. You're not wrong.
Deep down in Tartarus. How deep? Well, as Hesiod puts it, if you were to drop a bronze anvil from the heavens, it would take 9 days in freefall to reach the earth. Once it reached the earth, it would take another 9 days for the anvil to reach Tartarus. That's pretty deep. But if you underwent the same thought process I just did, you probably don't even care about the Titans anymore, or how deep Tartarus is in the ground. If you've been given time t and mass m, we could probably figure out how high heaven is based on how long the anvil fell. Well, some people did the math, and they found out that it's about 5.8 times 10 to the power of 8 meters, not taking the 100 kilometers of air resistance between the Kármán line and the Earth, or the gravitational pulls of other planets into account. Anyway, the point is, it's quite a ways away. I've included links in the description if you want to go through the maths. In any case, the Titans, after the Great Titanomachy, were thrust into Tartarus by victorious and vengeful Zeus. When he drove the Titans from Olympus, Gaia had another child. This time with someone unrelated, Tartaros. With Tartaros, she bore Typhus. That's right, the guy who impregnated the Echidna. Looks like we've now accounted for all the loose ends. Typhus, after producing a few monsters with Echidna, challenged Zeus. Typhus believed he was the rightful ruler of the cosmos. Naturally, Zeus disagreed, and they got into a heated argument. Very heated, actually, an earth-shaking battle. But Zeus obviously eventually overpowered Jormungandr with his... Oh, wait, sorry, I meant Typhus. Zeus eventually overpowered Typhus. He took some antibiotics and smote Typhus with his lightning bolts. After he smote Typhus, he thrust him, like his other bested foes, into Tartaros. Zeus, now king of gods, made Metis, the Oceanid, his first wife. And, before we carry on, I need to make a quick spoiler. Zeus has a lot of lovers. So many that if we were to try and connect them all to him on the same family tree, we'd have lines crisscrossing everywhere. So I'm going to add a special little feature. A family tree portal. They make things a tiny bit less messy. Not much, but enough for me to bother. When Metis was ready to bear her child, Gaia and Uranus prophesied that Zeus would father incredibly powerful children. Taking this to mean that he too would eventually fall prey to the merciless cycle of the succession myth, Gaia advised Zeus to eat not his child, but his entire wife, whole,
What?
before she could give birth. I'm sure Zeus was a bit shaken up after his fight with Typhus, because here he clearly didn't take any chances. He ate his wife. Like Cronus, Zeus just couldn't handle not having sex. He had a second wife, and children by her too. His aunt, the Titaness Themis. She bore the Horae, which translates to seasons. It seems the original idea is that they would be the goddesses of different seasons, spring, autumn, winter, that sort of thing. But instead, the three goddesses classified as being part of the Horae are Eunomia, goddess of lawfulness, Dike, goddess of justice, and Irene, goddess of peace. She then gave birth to the Miri, the three sisters of fate, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atrophy. But wait a minute, the Fates have already been born under Nyx. So this is a bit strange. Okay, fine, I get that different cultures have different theories regarding these gods' genealogies. It may vary depending on which poet you go to. But when the same individual poet contradicts himself in the same poem, I honestly don't know what to make of it.
And it doesn't make any sense that they would come from Zeus. That makes no sense at all.
This isn't something theocracy or Plato's theory regarding Aphrodite can solve, because it's Hesiod contradicting himself. You ask Google who bore the Fates, and it will say Nyx and later Zeus and Themis. But you can't be born twice in the same lifetime. I don't have a solution. I guess we just do what we always do when we run into such a snag. Just accept it and move on. Wife number 3, Eurynome the Oceanid. She bore the 3 Charites, or Grace.
Wait.
Oh, sorry. They are Aglaia, Euphrosyne, and Talia. They are the goddesses of beauty, joy, and abundance, respectively. Wife number 4, Sister Demeter. They had 1 child, pretty Persephone, goddess of vegetation. She has a bit of a tough time being abducted by her uncle Hades, who then makes her queen of the underworld. You can guess what that implies. Wife number 5, Nemesis.
I actually cannot guess. What does that mean?
Titaness, another aunt. With Zeus, she is famously the mother of the 9 muses. Clio, muse of history, Euterpe, muse of music, Thalia, muse of comedy and idylls, Melpomene, muse of tragedy, Terpsichore, muse of dance and chorus, Erato, muse of love poetry, Polyhymnia, muse of many things, but also sacred poetry and hymns, Urania, muse of astronomy, and Calliope, muse of eloquence and epic poetry. Interesting fact, the word mnemonic comes from Mnemosyne's name. Makes sense considering she's the god of memory. Wife number 6, Lascivious Leto. They had Apollo and Artemis, gods of, many things. Apollo and Artemis appear to be the quintessential Greek gods with complex mythologies and traditions. Wikipedia says Apollo is the god of oracles, healing, archery, music, arts, sunlight, knowledge, herds, flocks, and protection of the young, while Artemis is the goddess of the hunt, the wilderness, wild animals, the moon, chastity, childbirth, and midwifery. So as not to complicate things, I'll put them down as god and goddess, seeing as they embody the model Greek deity. Finally, wife number 7, Hera, another sister. With her, Zeus had 3 children: Hebe, goddess of youth; Ares, god of war; and Eileithyia, goddess of childbirth. Plot twist. While Zeus was overseeing a battle, his forehead burst open like a popped zit, and out came his first child. Remember Metis? She actually gave birth and raised Zeus's first child inside of Zeus, the widely loved Athena, goddess of wisdom.
Wow.
Now, if I were Hera, I'd have no idea what to make of what I just saw. But I'm not, and Hera is far wiser than I in matters of family. She knew right away that Zeus had had a child without her. Not unfairly, she got quite angry. She decided that if Zeus was going to have a child without her, then she'd do the same to him. She was going to have a child by herself. And, just like that, out popped Hephaestus, god of fire.
That looks to me like another generation of gods wrapped up.
But wait, you might be thinking. We're only on line 928. What?
Why is his voice just turned feminine?
God of fire.
That looks to me like another generation of gods wrapped up.
But wait, you might be thinking. We're only on line 928. What about the other 94 lines? A lot can happen in 94 lines. And if I could read your mind, I'd say, yeah, you're right. There's still a little bit more to go. If you're still here, great. Now let's finish the story once and for all. First, let's move Amphitrite from this list of sea nymphs and give her her own place. Poseidon, that licorice pervert, mingled with Amphitrite, producing Crichton, a cleaning robot that lives on the mining ship Red Dwarf. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong one. No, Triton. Triton is a sea god who lives in a golden palace at the bottom of the sea.
Wow.
Now, here's a fun story. Hephaestus was married to the most beautiful of all gods and goddesses, Aphrodite, except Hephaestus is a worthless wimp, and he could not sate Aphrodite's sexual appetite. So, she and Ares hooked up, consequently cuckolding Hephaestus. Helios sees all. Cheeky little voyeur saw the two having sex. Helios, being a great pal to his cousin once removed, alerted Hephaestus. To get revenge, Hephaestus made a golden net that would trap Aphrodite and Ares the next time they had sex. So, when they did, he caught them. When the gods saw this, they all laughed, and Hephaestus was allowed to divorce Aphrodite. In their affairs, Aphrodite and Ares had 3 children, the twins Phobos and Deimos, fear and panic, and Harmonia, goddess of harmony, who then went on to marry Cadmus, for mortal. He was the first king of Thebes. They had a child, Semele, the personification of intellectual imagination or rationalism. Now Hesiod doesn't mention the Pleiades, but Atlas, the Titan, also mingled with some Okeanids, one of them being Pleione, who bore 7 daughters, companions to Artemis, who are collectively known as the Pleiades: Maia, Electra, Taygete, Alcyone, Selene, Sterope, and Merope. Apparently, Atlas had more children with other Okeanids, such as the Hyades and Calypso, but they don't concern Hesiod. Therefore, they don't concern me either. I mention the Pleiades because Zeus actually beds one of them. Well, technically more than one, but that's not really important to the story. With Maia, the eldest, they have Hermes, god of religion. Zeus then shares his bed with Semele. Now this is why your choice of translation matters. This copy of the Theogony I found online only goes up to 900. I switched to a translation by Apostolos Athanasakis, Professor A. From line 940, it says Semele, daughter of Cadmus, yielded to Zeus's lust, and she, a mere mortal, is now the divine mother of the dazzling and deathless god in whom many exult. Who is this god? I don't know. What about Hesiod? He doesn't seem to know either. He then goes on to talk about the next lady bedded by Zeus. No time for explanations, I suppose, but thanks to the Annenberg Foundation, I was able to find an alternative line that reads, "And Semele, daughter of Cadmus, was joined with him in love, and bore him a splendid son, joyous Dionysus." We have something. So,
That's Jesus.
having procreated with her great-grandfather, Semele gives birth to Dionysus, god of wine. Finally, Zeus slept with Alcmene, some insignificant mortal who gave birth to the psychotic homicidal Heracles. Hephaestus marries Aglaia, one of the Graces, Dionysus marries the mortal Ariadne, and Heracles marries his half-sister Hebe. Not that I'm going to show these because they don't have any children and it would only mess up my
I thought Ariadne was what's her face? Aphrodite.
tree. Perseus, the Oceanid, mingled with Helios and bore him King Aeetes and Circe, who is famous for turning Odysseus' crew into swine. Then, King Aeetes married, by divine decree apparently, Idaea, of the blooming cheeks. She's the last Oceanid we singled out. They had a daughter, Medea, who appears in the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. Now, these are the final 40 or so lines. From line 967, Hesiod says, "Make the theme of your song the immortal goddesses who shared the beds of mortals." And I know I haven't been entirely consistent, but there are a few I'd like to leave out of the family tree, because it would require some laborious rearrangements that I wish I had the foresight to prepare for, but Prometheus was not with me this time. Nevertheless, I'll mention them all, and I'll try and include as many as possible on the tree. Demeter married Iason, a mortal hero, and through the mortal portal, had sex on a thrice-ploughed field and had a son, Plutus, demigod of wealth. Eos had 2 children, Memnon, king of the Ethiopians, and Lord Emathion. Then Eos mingled with Cephalos, another mortal hero. They had the very beautiful son, Phaethon. Then Jason married Medea, apologies for the spoiler if you're hoping to read the myth of the Golden Fleece, and they had a son, Medeos. Then 2 sea nymphs married. Samathe lay with a mortal called Iacos, and gave birth to Phocos the hero. Thetis married a mortal named Peleus. They had the famous hero Achilles, known across the globe as having the weakest heels in all of Greece. Next, after marrying the Trojan nobleman Anchises, Aphrodite gave birth to Aeneas. Circe mingled with Odysseus and had 3 children, Agrios, Latinos, and Telegonos. I think Telegonos accidentally kills his father and then marries his stepmother. I don't know. At this point, I'm a little bit desensitized to the patricide. Anyway, as I mentioned, Odysseus did indeed have a wife waiting for him. So, after having sinned with Circe, he probably hated himself. Wrapped in guilt, he left and made his return. But not before having another cheeky affair with Calypso, the daughter of Atlas. With her, he had 2 children, Nausitus and Nausinous. Next, Hesiod says, "O sweet singing Olympian muses, daughters of Zeus, sing of mortal women." Then, he abruptly ends. Yep, that's really it. My theory is that there's more to the poem.
That's
But this
it?
was of mortal women.
Oh, sweet singing Olympian muses, daughters of Zeus, sing of mortal women? What?
Then, he abruptly ends. Yep, that's really it. My theory is that there's more to the poem. But this was composed orally. Huge chunks of it may have been completely forgotten. But yes, this is, with some minor additions and deletions, Hesiod's Greek god family tree. Amazing.
Wow. That was very, very long. That's the longest video I've ever reacted to. And I didn't retain even half of that. But the one thing that I did learn is that Venus is Phosphorus and is also Lucifer and is also the morning star. I did not know that. And that made all of that worth it for me. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. Like and sub. Peace. I'm out.